Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Tēnā koutou nā manuhiri. No mai, haramai ki tēnei whare karakia. A te atua, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to this house Auckland Unitarians built 116 years ago. To this house we come bringing our boldest dreams, seeking here the inspiration and strength to make them be. To this house we come hoping to bury broken dreams and to be sustained through their pain and to discover new ones amidst their tears. We come here lonely, isolated from meaningful human contact, searching for warmth and closeness and care. Needing to grow beyond plateaus of the commonplace. We seek here challenges and commitments productive of greater wholeness and deeper meanings. We come intense and constructed, hoping for encouragement, to shed our pretenses and to be ourselves. Filled with despair and self-doubt, we seek affirmations, prodding us to say yes to ourselves and to life. Somehow always putting happiness ahead of ourselves, we enter this place trusting that what happens here will enable us to make and to accept a little bit of it now, today. Strange place, this house. Here we cry and sing, laugh, hurt, dance, touch, survive, celebrate, grow, search, doubt, hope, rejoice, pray, trust, care, learn, think, wonder, be, become. Yes, this morning to this house we come. We especially welcome you if you are coming to this house as a visitor just passing through or seeking a spiritual home. Know that we're pleased and honored by your presence. My opening words are from Faith Without Certainty, Liberal Theology in the 21st Century by Paul Razor. Many people come to liberal congregations to free themselves from what they often describe as a suffocating conformity of doctrine in other traditions. Yet once there, they sometimes find that the absence of a prescriptive belief system leaves them feeling adrift in the religious sea. They want to be able to respond with joy and conviction to the perennial question, what do you liberals believe anyway? And they want to be able to do this without resorting to the tired liberal litany of things they don't believe in. Religious liberalism often involved a willingness to affirm faith without certainty. This is not the same thing as faith without conviction. It does mean that religious liberals tend to hold faith claims with a certain tentativeness. This is partly a result of a liberal mindset that is always testing and second-guessing itself. It also reflects the liberal commitment to open-ended inquiry and the realization that truth is not given once for all time. The same tendency can produce personal belief systems or theologies articulated in generalized ideals, perhaps sincerely felt, but often without a deep grounding or much specific content. Liberal theology is not for the faint of heart. It points us in a general direction without telling us the specific destination. It refuses to make our commitments for us, but holds us accountable for the commitments we make. The liberal religious tradition is an invitation, not a mandate. It invites us to live with ambiguity without giving in to facile compromise, to engage in dialogue without trying to control the conversation, to be open to change without accepting change too casually, to take commitment seriously, but not blindly, and to be engaged in the culture without succumbing to the culture's values. The chalice lighting words are by Anne Forster. Come now, out of the darkness of our unknowing and the dusk of our dreaming. Come we now from far places. Come we now into the twilight of our awakening and the reflection of our gathering. Come we now all together. We bring unilluminated our dark caves of doubting. We seek unbedazzled the clear light of understanding. May the sparks of our joining kindle our resolve, brighten our spirits, reflect our love, and unshadow our days. Come we now, entering the dawning. I hate to admit it, but I fear I'm a creature of habit. Most mainline Christian churches have a 3-year lectionary that they, for the most part, share. A lectionary sets readings from both the Hebrew scriptures and Christian writings to be read on a particular Sunday over the course of the year. After 3 years, if you have gone to church every Sunday like every good Christian does, you have heard most of the Bible. There's one notable exception. It is on the Sunday after Easter. Christians hear the story of doubting Thomas, which is told only in the Gospel of John every year. Thomas also has a Saints' Day, which means a minister must come up with a new take on the subject of doubt at least once, if not twice, every year. I can't seem to break the habit. So on this first Sunday after Easter, I find myself reflecting once again on doubt. Before going further, I need to explain that the Gospel of John, the last to be written of the 4 included in the New Testament, was by a community of Jewish mystics who had been kicked out of the synagogue for their heretical ideas. Nothing in their gospel happened historically. Not the Samaritan woman at the well, not the wedding at Cana. Jesus never said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nothing Jesus supposedly said was said by him in this gospel. When evangelical Christians trot out their favorite verse, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. That is John, not Jesus. He never said it. He never thought it. John's gospel reveals how his early followers came to understand him. It was not about what he did or said. The gospel says more about them than Jesus. To listen to the story of doubting Thomas without understanding that those who told it had been ostracized by their community for believing Jesus is the Son of God is to miss the nuances of the story. Just in case you're amongst the 10% who grow up Unitarians, or are spiritual seekers who did not grow up in any church, here's a brief synopsis of the story. The empty tomb had been discovered a week earlier by some women who were, of course, by virtue of their gender, unreliable witnesses. The male disciples had taken off for home in Galilee, when their leader was arrested, tried, and sentenced to die. 10 of the remaining 11 had gathered in an undisclosed location to discuss what to do next. In fear, the doors were locked. Jesus appeared to them unimpeded by locked doors and told them not to be afraid and breathed his Spirit upon them. One of the 11 was missing, Thomas. When told of the appearance, Thomas was skeptical. He joined them the next week, and once again, Jesus disdained the locked doors and invited Thomas to touch his wounds. Thomas did and was convinced, being the first of his followers to declare Jesus as his Lord and his God. Jesus was unimpressed that Thomas needed to be convinced by seeing and touching his wounds, and blessed those who have not seen and still believe. It's pretty clear Thomas was the first Unitarian. For 2,000 years, he has paid the price of being disparaged for his doubt. John's community, though, to be fair, was also disparaged for their belief in Jesus and his resurrection. This story condemned those in the synagogue who required proof that Jesus was their fulfillment of the hope that the Messiah would come save Israel. For John, doubt was the antithesis of faith. Doubt is still the enemy in many faith groups. The story is read in some Christian churches each year to say belief in Jesus as the Son of God is good, doubt is bad. I have to say it's not quite so simple. Believing is not faith. Believing is about what we hold true. When our beliefs move us to action, that is faith. In Greek, faith is a verb. English doesn't have an equivalent, so we incorrectly conflate them, making belief the equivalent of faith. In fact, when we doubt, it is about disbelief, not lack of faith. There is a long history of people of faith having doubt. Doubt, a history by Jennifer Hecht, is a thick book that runs through the history of great doubters like Socrates and Jesus, Confucius, and Thomas Jefferson. She explores doubt in the various world religions as well as great secular traditions. Like belief, she writes in the introduction, doubt takes a lot of different forms, from ancient skepticism to modern scientific empiricism, from doubt in many gods to doubt in one God to doubt that recreates and enlivens faith, and doubt that is really disbelief. Many of us are Unitarians because we were led here by doubt. It's not that doubting brought us to try this community, but doubting is what led many of us away from other communities where doubt was discouraged, where questions were quarantined, where wondering about stuff was not welcomed. Many people in this congregation left another faith community in doubt. Or perhaps you were sent from or even kicked out of other communities because you had doubts about the creeds and the beliefs and the professions of faith. Or maybe you never were all that connected to a faith community and began to experience doubts about the meaningfulness of the life you were leading. Whatever the circumstances, doubt was a major element. And now with doubt still at hand, you are here. Doubting is the red meat of Unitarians and why many true believers scorn us. Yet those same true believers filled with certainty would find their faith greatly enhanced by some doubt. According to one of my favorite American theologians, Frederick Buechner, if you don't have doubts, you're either kidding yourself or asleep. Doubts are the ants in the pants of faith. They keep it alive and moving. According to Bahashan Hakusan, a Zen master, doubt is essential to enlightenment. Great doubt, great awakening. Small doubt, small awakening. No doubt, no awakening. According to French philosopher René Descartes, doubt is essential to seeking truth. It is necessary that at least once in your life you doubt as far as possible all things. According to a preeminent theologian of the 20th century, Paul Tillich, doubt isn't the opposite of faith, it is an element of faith. According to your minister, doubt isn't about what we don't believe. It is the impetus to live out our faith with integrity. By that I mean I seek to live a faith that lets go of certainty and makes room for larger and possibly unknowable answers. A faith that meets truth while still bearing the full weight of suffering and our doubt of what is right and what is possible. Let me offer an unexpected example of such faith. Leslie Hazelton, an agnostic Jew, published a biography of Muhammad. She wanted to understand what happened that night in the year 610 on a mountaintop outside of Mecca when Muhammad received the first revelation of the Quran. As an agnostic Jew, she felt out of her league, but this question would not let go of her. As a rationalist, the human encountering the divine, as Muslims believe Muhammad does, seems like wishful thinking. But as she researched written accounts, she was struck not by what happened, but by what did not happen. He did not come down the mountain walking on air, singing hallelujah and bless the Lord. He did not radiate light or joy. There were no choirs of angels, no golden aura, no sense of his absolute foreordained role as the messenger of God. He did none of the things that might make it easy to put down the whole story as a pious fable. In his own reported words, Muhammad was so convinced at first what had happened was unreal, a hallucination, a trick of the eye, or at worst, a possession by a spirit, that he was tempted to escape the terror of what he experienced by jumping off a cliff. So the man that fled down the mountain that night trembled with fear, overwhelmed not with conviction, but by doubt. She says that whether he believed the words he heard that night came from inside himself or outside himself, what is clear is that he did experience them. And he did so with a force that would shatter his sense of himself and his world. Some conservative Muslim theologians insist that Muhammad didn't doubt for a moment. They want him to be perfect. Yet it was precisely his doubt that brought him alive for Leslie Hazelton, that allowed her to see him in full, to accord him integrity. And the more she thought about it, the more his doubt made sense. Because the more that you doubt, the stronger your faith. Novelist Graham Greene says, doubt is the heart of the matter. Abolish all doubt, and what is left is not faith, but absolute heartless conviction that serves as an ideal refuge from the struggles and questions of real faith. Doubting isn't easy and is often painful. Many prefer to avoid it completely. Yet, this struggle is simply part of reclaiming our power to act in faith. Jacob wrestled with the angel. Buddha faced Mara, the demon who assaulted him beneath the Bodhi tree, using violence, sensory pleasure, and mockery in an attempt to prevent him from attaining enlightenment. Jesus spent 40 days and nights in the wilderness being tempted by Satan to forsake his mission. And Muhammad struggled with despair as he was forced to flee from his beloved Mecca in fear for his life. To better struggle with doubt, we must know there are two types, says the Buddha. One is helpful to faith, and one is a hindrance. The helpful doubt encourages us to investigate when we are feeling disoriented, to experiment with teachings and not dismiss a truth simply because it doesn't fit into our worldview. This good doubt helps us discover a wider view of truth that will, in the Buddha's words, make of us a light. The second kind of doubt is a mind state of uncertainty and indecision that brings this practice to a standstill. Jan Martel, in his book Life of Pi, says to choose this type of doubt as a philosophy of life is akin to choosing immobility as a means of transportation. Plagued by this doubt, we get lost in endless thought loops that question our ability, our worth, and even the value of questioning. Today, we live in a world strewn with this kind of doubt, and it hampers our ability to perceive truth, to have faith, to take action, to assert our beliefs or claim our identities. It can be confusing and overwhelming. This doubt cynically isolates us from others, our communities, and even ourselves. Unitarian minister Michael Schuler offers us an antidote: trust. He says this: cherish your doubts, for doubt is the servant of truth. Question your convictions, for beliefs too tightly held strangle the mind and its natural wisdom. Suspect all certitudes, for the world whirls on, nothing abides. Yet in our inner rooms full of doubt, inquiry, and suspicion, let a corner be reserved for trust. For without trust, there is no space for communities to gather or for friendships to be forged. It is trust that allows our doubts to enliven our faith, a faith that can believe in, a faith we can believe in, a faith we can act on, a faith that can make us a light to the world. Amen. For our meditation, I want to share some correspondence from Rainer Maria Rilke. In 1903, he wrote a letter to his protege, the 19-year-old cadet and budding poet Franz Xaver Kappus. Said this: "You are so young. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and learn to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, evolve some distant day into the answer." 6 months later, in response to another letter from Franz, "What I could say about your disposition to doubt or about your inability to bring your outer and inner life into harmony or about anything else that oppresses you. It is always what I've said before, always the wish that you endure and single-heartedness enough to believe that you might win increasing trust in what is difficult. Your doubt can become a good quality if you train it. It must become aware. Ask it whenever it wants to spoil something for you. Why something is ugly demands proof. Why something is ugly, demand proof from it, test it, and you will perhaps find it helpless and nonplussed, perhaps also aggressive. But do not give way. Demand arguments and conduct yourself thus carefully and consistently every single time. And the day will dawn when doubt will become, instead of a subverter, one of your best workmen, perhaps the cleverest of all who are building your life. My closing words are a prayer by a Universalist minister, Clinton Lee Scott. Let me keep the doors of my mind open for the possible knock of some vagrant truth. Let me swing wide the shuttered windows of my heart, that perchance some winged messenger of love will light upon my sill.